I feel like it's been a while since I presented with all the COVID thing. I'm such an in-person moving kind of person. So you might notice me moving on the screen a little more than some other people might. But I'm excited. And when Judy asked me what topic I would present on, resiliency just kept coming to me. I feel like in this day and age with the world where it is, it's a topic that we all can relate to. And so I put together brain balancing for emotional resiliency. And I'd like to add a slideshow as we go so that there's some visuals to go along with this. Let's see. So here's my technical piece here. See how I do. There we go. Judy, could everybody see that? Yes? Okay, cool. And I'm also going to open up chat box, but it covers up everything. So I'm going to rely on you, Judy, for helping with that. Anyway, so emotional balancing for emotional, or brain balancing for emotional resiliency is the topic today. And I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm sorry, why isn't my slideshow moving? There it goes. Hit it harder. Okay. Who needs some brain balancing tonight? My name is Pam Formosa, and as Judy did a wonderful job introducing me, my background is occupational therapy, and I'm the owner of Brain Fit Academy over in Hopedale. And what we do there is we work with children and families who struggle with things like attention, anxiety, emotional regulation, learning disabilities, autism. What we really are working on is helping to rebuild, develop, and organize the lower part of the brain so that they can function and be more resilient. My story really started in the year 2000. I had been an OT for about 14 years at that point, working at a school with kids with learning challenges. And I was feeling like I needed some more learning. I was kind of out of my resources, and somebody told me to take a Brain Gym 101 class. And I didn't know what a Brain Gym 101 class was, but I said, well, all right, let's check it out. Found one in the area, and it was a 3-day, very experiential, movement-based learning readiness program. And so the first day when I was doing the class, I was like so excited. I'm like, oh, cool! These movements of crossing over the midline and rubbing the ears and all these kind of crazy things. But I'm like, I could definitely use these with the kids at the school for self-regulation and support them with movement breaks, and got very excited about it. On the second day of that class, I became very quiet. I was experiencing things that I really couldn't put my finger on. And by the third day, I had literally moved through some social emotional struggles that I had had my entire life, and I didn't have to talk about it. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, whatever this is, I need more of, because I definitely was a person, child and person, who didn't really want to talk about my feelings, but they were there. And so when I was using these strategies from Brain Gym to really calm the nervous system and be able to access my thoughts and problem solving, I was blown away, absolutely blown away by the power of this. So my story started there, where my life did a 180. I ended up going part-time in that job and taking all the training I needed to become a licensed Brain Gym consultant. And at that point in 2001, opened up my first private practice, which is really what we're doing now, but it was just me. Now we have coaches who go out to people's homes, and we've expanded so that we can reach more kids and families. So what I want to talk to you tonight about is resilience. And so what is resilience? It basically is the ability to recover quickly from difficulties, trauma, and stress. And like I said at the beginning, I think this is very applicable to so many of us who are out there right now struggling with the whole change in our world. And So I want to talk about what is happening with resilience in relation to the brain. I'm all about the brain, and I'm always interested in kind of have a general sense of where in the brain is this happening and what's happening here. So I'm going to lead you through some of that. And then I want to lead you through some experiential work that you can do right tonight during this in the comfort of your own home, and hopefully notice some changes and take away with you some tools that you can use for your own resiliency or your child's resiliency. Okay. Um, so let's just look at this brain here. This is kind of the brain that represents Brain Fit Academy. It's based in the triune brain theory by Dr. Paul MacLean. And as you see, there's basically 3 levels of the brain. We've got the red brainstem, we've got the green emotional brain, and the blue thinking brain. And the idea is that these 3 levels of the brain have developed over time, and now they work together to guide our performance and our behaviors. And so if we're looking at it from a functional point of view, what happens is the sensory information comes into the brainstem. And when I say sensory information, I'm talking auditory, visual, taste, smell, as well as touch, our balance systems. It's all coming in all at once. And hopefully it's going to weave together like a tapestry so that when it goes up higher in the brain, it's coming in a coherent way. This is also part of the brain that is responsible for all the automatic kinds of things in life, like our heart rate and our respiratory system and our blood pressure. It's part of the fight-flight system that signals us to defend ourselves. It's our wake-sleep cycle, our hunger cycle, and whether we should eat or not, and when we're full. So lots and lots of things are going on down there. So the sensory information comes in, and then it weaves together, like I said, and it hits the emotional brain. And the emotional brain is really about deciding if this information is safe or is it a threat. And if it's safe, there's neurotransmitters that get released to help build our attention, and we're able to respond and organize our thoughts, our bodies, our environment to handle whatever's going on. And that is kind of where resilience is happening, way up on the higher level thinking brain. However, what can often happen is the incoming information may be coming in too fast, too scary, with lots and lots of uncertainty. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have going on these days. And the emotional brain receives that information and says, threat to my survival. And instead of being able to go up to the higher level thinking brain where we can respond, now the emotional brain releases all this adrenaline and cortisol and shoots the information down to the brainstem level again, where we react to the information instead of respond. And that reaction is called our fight, flight, freeze response. So I'm going to pause just for a second and make sure that there's any questions that anybody's coming in with questions. I'm not seeing any yet that I need to respond to. So let's talk about this fight, flight, freeze response. And let's do that. There we go. The fight, flight, freeze response has basically a behavioral perspective or reactions and a physiological reactions. And I think it's really important. This was such a huge light bulb in my life of when I understood this, because it helps us figure out how we can actually deal with our fight flight more readily. So let's look at the behavior reactions to stress. We might go into a fight or flight or a freeze or a combination, and we tend to have kind of our own mode of operation. I'll probably share with you is I was definitely a flighter. If something was uncomfortable, I would flight. And that was all through my childhood and through up to about age 40. I no longer do that, so that's good. But if you might go into a fight. If you're in that fight flight response and you go down that fight road, you might be real frustrated and openly explosive. We might be hitting walls or kicking things. We might feel aggressive or, feel resistance, resist and say, no, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. Or we might go into more of a flight, like I had mentioned, where we're more distractible. We might be the class clown because it's easier to try to be funny and lighten the mood than to admit that we're uncomfortable or we don't know how to read. Flighters are really good at redirecting, like in saying, oh, instead of doing it this way, maybe we could do this instead. And escape behaviors. You see that going to the bathroom, going to the nurse's office, kind of denying, saying, oh, I can't go out, and making excuses. And oftentimes we get bored easily. And I'm seeing some people are saying, Benjamin was a fight, fight, fight. So yes, Judy, I remember you talking about that, and that you've been in freeze through a lot of your life, and these tools and techniques have helped us. That's awesome. I don't know what I would do without these tools, Judy. I honestly don't. I would not be where I am today. And I feel very blessed that I ran into Brain Gym back in 2000, because I haven't stopped using them in 20 years. These tools are lifelong for me. So back to freeze. Then we might go into a freeze, which is that whiny, teary, clingy, fearfulness, a real reluctance to try new things. You may feel like you withdraw or hide. I mean, some kids literally hide behind things. And it's not, I won't do it. It's, I can't do it. It's almost like that hopeless, just helpless and hopeless kind of place to be. It's not a fun place at all. So, and as you can imagine, you might be able to relate to these either for yourself, which again, this is human nature. So this is everybody, or your children, or your students that you're dealing with. And when I learned about these behaviors, I realized that my 12-year-olds that I was working with in a pre-vocational setting, they weren't just trying to push my buttons, and they weren't just trying to be a pain in the butt. They literally were in fight flight. And I didn't realize that that was a state of mind, if you will, back then. And so when I learned this, I started to actually see these kids from a different lens. And because of that, I was able to approach the behaviors in a very different way. And I offered more strategies that were calming to pull them out of the fight flight so that they could be as productive as they could be, versus punishment or increased structure or, limits and all those kind of things that I had been doing, which were not working. So the other piece to fight flight is the physiological reactions to stress. And those are one of the biggest things that most people aren't necessarily aware of, is that we have something called a tendon guard reflex. And that is when we come into some kind of stress, and starting with our Achilles tendon, the calf muscles tightens up, and that's to get us up on our toes to run. And because a lot of times in our society we can't run, we end up tightening our back so we don't fall forward, and tightening our neck. So think about that for a second in terms of us, a lot of adults, but also kids. You'd be amazed how tight our calf muscles can be, how tight our lower backs can be, how tight our necks can be. Well, this is part of that pulling back tendon guard reaction that our system has to pull us away from danger, but we're not unlocking it in order to start to move forward again. So we end up with the aches and pains and a lot of pulling back. Our breathing with fight flight becomes very shallow. Our heart rate increases, and it's pumping oxygen. Think about that. If you're in a place where you're like suddenly walk in front of a car by mistake and you go, and that's, you take a big breath and your heart's pounding. Where is the blood and oxygen flowing to? Well, it's actually flowing to the big muscles ready for fight and flight, excuse me, and taking blood flow away from our digestive system, hence all the stomach aches and the digestive issues that we have going on, and it takes away from our higher level thinking brain and brings us down to this more protective, or not protective, primitive part of the brain. It also, we're having a release of adrenaline and cortisol. One of the other things that people don't necessarily realize is that our eyes dilate and they go out to the periphery just a little bit. And so I want you to imagine for a second, you're in a dark parking lot and you suddenly realize you're alone in a dark parking lot. And all of a sudden, what do you notice? I think women would probably recognize this more. All of a sudden, you're aware of everything, right? And that's because what happens, our eyes dilated and went out to the periphery just a little bit so that we can really keep ourselves safe. And thank goodness we get into the car, we lock the door, we take a breath and say, okay, I'm safe. Our eyes can come back down to normal. But if this is something that's happening over and over and over again, what you'll notice is that the eyes don't come back. And if the eyes don't come back, it's going to make it very difficult for a child who's in fight flight to come into a classroom and bring the eyes back down to the paper and bring them into convergence. And so it looks like an attention issue or a behavioral issue. He won't read, he can't focus, but it could be seriously that he's in fight flight and the eyes are not converging to come down because they're out here. The other thing I wanted to mention is our jaws lock. And many of us can relate to the grinding of the teeth, right? And, the lock jaw in the morning. But all this physical stuff is going on with fight flight. So really how we manage and strengthen our resilience is to manage our lower brain and really help the emotional brain and the brainstem get back on board to be able to keep us out of the brainstem and into the higher level thinking brain where we can respond to the world around us. So one of the things that is very important in our approach is that we want to stay goal-oriented when we think about resilience and brain balancing for resilience, because our brains organize best through goal-oriented behavior. So I often will ask people, how can I help you? What would you like to get out of this? What's your goal? And can you guess, just take one guess, the answer is almost 99% of the time, I don't want to be stressed. Well, yes, of course, because that's where we are. When people are coming in and feeling like this, they are in some form of fight flight, and that they're stressed and they're anxious. And one of the first things I teach is that the brain does not know how to not do something. It's a very goal-oriented, action-oriented organ. So when you say, I don't want to be stressed and anxious, what the brain hears is stressed and anxious. So it's very hard to work around that language. So I will ask the question, let me ask, if you were not stressed and anxious, how would you be? And I get usually the answer, I would be calm or I would be relaxed. Well, we're getting there. That is awesome. So the body likes to know how to relax. Let's go and ask, if you were relaxed or calm, what would be different? How would life be different for you? And I might get something like, I would be more present or patient with my kids. And now we're starting to get down to what the challenge is and what we really want. And so then I'd even go further and say, well, if you were present or more patient with your child, how would life be different? And I see things that now come out, well, I'd be able to organize my day. I would be able to listen and communicate more effectively with my daughter or my son. I would spend more quality time with my family, like just play a game or go for a hike. So do you start to see how these are really more action-oriented goals? When you can get to an action-oriented goal around resilience and feeling good, your brain can organize around that so much faster, so much faster. So what I would like you to do is, let's see, what did I do? I want you to think for a second about your goal or your intention. And I'm going to sort of give it to you about your, something about resilience. And about today's life. And I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. Let me just move to the next slide. Sorry about that. I want you to take a moment and notice where you are right now in terms of your intention. Okay. So what is your intention? Well, my goal for tonight is really to help you set up to be in a better space around what's going on in the world right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a couple different words, and I just want you to notice these particular things, and I'm going to lead you through this. So let's take a pause, and I just want you to notice what these words do for you. Money, remote learning, COVID, presidential election, riots, Zoom, family, vaccines. Okay, so take a moment and just notice, as I was saying those words, what thoughts were coming up in your head? What self-talk? Did you feel positive? Did you feel energized? Did you can write these in the chat if you want. I want you to notice, what did you feel in your body as I was saying those words? Did you feel any tightness in your body? Tightness in the hands or the shoulders, the neck? Tightness in the chest. I see fear, resistance, increased heart rate. Yeah. So just taking a moment and we're noticing the physical parts of the fight flight. And the self-talk usually is not so helpful. It's usually a little negative. If you could label the emotions that are coming up when I talk about those words. Maybe sadness, maybe fear, maybe hopelessness, maybe excitement that the world is going to become new and change to the better. Frustration, that's a common one, right? Now I want you to rate your level of resilience right now. In today's world, what is the rate or the level of your resilience? Is it a 1, like I'm done, I'm like so done? Or is it a 10, like I am feeling very confident we're going to get through this and I've got all these hopes and dreams ahead of us? Where are you right now? And I have to say, I'm probably myself right now at about a 5. And it's been a roller coaster ride, right? For everybody, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 10. I'm getting a 10, 8, 9, 7, 8, 7. Oh, good for you. I'm thrilled to hear how good people are feeling. Maybe this is a webinar for myself. This is good. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to, now we have an intention to build our resilience. Oh my gosh, resilience. And we notice where we are. Now we're going to take some action to balance ourselves for more success. So what I'm going to do is actually lead you through 7 brain gym activities. They're easy, but they're very experiential. We're going to actually take the time to do them right here in front of the computer. And then we're going to come back and just notice again at the end. So the first one is brain gym tools we're going to use for emotional resilience. First one is called hookups. And these pictures are pretty self-explanatory, but this one is a quiet one. It's kind of like a moment of silence, if you will, sitting in this first position on the left. And the way you do that is you put your hands like this, you cross them over and bring them up to the top, and then you cross your feet. And there also your tongue is going to rest at the top, the roof of your mouth. There's an acupressure point there that helps to reduce your heart rate. And relax your shoulders. And as we sit here, we're going to sit here for about 45 seconds. I want you to just focus on your breath. Your eyes can be open or closed, but let's take a moment. And then I'm going to have you uncross your feet. And like the kid on the right side, you're going to put your fingertips together like this. And with the kids, I just have them push each finger one at a time, just to really bring their attention to those fingertips. It's just part 2 of hookups. All right. So just pause for a second and notice how you feel now. If you felt any shift in terms of calmness, clarity. Okay. The next 2 I'm going to show you is one is called energy yawn, and this has to do with releasing that tension in the jaw as part of fight flight. And it helps to get oxygen in the brain and yawn and shift energy, as it could say. So we're going to fake till you make it, fake it till you make it, where you're going to rub this part of your jaw, and we're going to do some big yawns. And feel free to make noise. If there's anybody at home around you, they'll probably look at you like you're weird, and that's okay. But noise is good. One, see if I can fake it till I make it to get a real one. We're lengthening and opening up that jaw. Releasing some tension. Sometimes I notice my eyes start to water a little bit, and it's a natural way of releasing tension in this area where there's neural pathways that feed the eyes, ears, and the mouth. And if there's tension here, sometimes we don't get the information from the eyes and the brain that they need lubrication. So it's a very natural way of resetting us to be more productive. The next one's called positive points. And this is a point right up on the forehead. She has her elbows out to here. I usually lay them on the table. And you're just going to push up on the skin in a very, very simple way. And you're just going to hold. And we're going to do this for about 20 seconds. So what is this doing? When you push up on the skin there's these what they call neurovascular points, and when they get stimulated, what they do is they say that they draw blood flow away from the survival brain up to the higher level thinking brain, so that we can be calmer, that we can see more clearly, we can respond instead of react. And I'm sure you're noticing this, but I'm noticing as I do these activities, I'm slowing down, I'm calming, I'm probably a little more clear in my words. So just take a moment and notice any changes. Feel free to put them on the chat if you want to share. The next one I want to teach you is called calf pumps. And this goes back to the tendon guard reflex that I had talked about. And it starts in the Achilles tendon. And it's that when the Achilles tendon gets activated, it tightens that calf muscle and gets us ready to run. But when it doesn't lengthen again, what it does is it keeps sending signals to the brain that we need to run and that we're not safe. So it really causes a negative impact on attention and focus because the body's getting mixed messages. So the calf pump is a really nice one, and it's a standing one. I tend to do it against a wall or a chair for balance. So I wanted to show you a picture of the movement. It's an up-down movement. So if we stand up and just put one foot behind the other, you'll notice my back leg is straight and my front leg is bent, and I'm standing up nice and tall. As I lift the back heel up, my front leg straightens and I get tall, and then I get short. And when I'm in the short position, I'm lengthening that calf. So I'm going to go up and down, I don't know, 7 or 8 times. Each time pausing to lengthen that calf muscle. You may notice that one side is tighter than the other. That is often the case. It's also one that takes a little practice to motor plan, but once you got it, you got it. This is one that I find that when kids get and they use, this can make a huge difference in a classroom or before homework. It really lengthens that calf so we can pull back, slow down, get a big picture, pause, stop and think, all that good stuff. Notice how your calf feels. Do you feel it being activated and bringing awareness to that part of our body? So many times, people say it's like magic. And I'm like, no, it's just actually targeting the certain points in our body that are really helpful in communicating to the brain. I'm seeing some more people commenting about their resilience level 4 and 5. Somebody felt positive energy through the forehead, more relaxed and alert. That's awesome noticing. Okay. So take a little bit of a pause. If you have water is always a great stress reducer. All right. So moving on, we talked about managing our lower brain is helping with resilience. The other piece to managing resilience is improving our processing, the communication between the left and the right sides of the brain. Okay. Most of us know or are aware that we have 2 sides of the brain. What I did not really understand was that when you're under stress, communication between the left and right hemispheres of the brain break down. They can become very blocked. And I was a child that definitely struggled with this, but I didn't know that that was what was happening. From a very early age, all through middle school, high school, college, young adult life, when I was uncomfortable, I mentioned that I was a flighter, but one of the big challenges that I had was that I would absolutely lose my ability to find my language. I would be like blank. And if I was in a group setting or someone asked me a question or I was on a job interview, I literally would go deer in the headlights. And so from that, as you can imagine, there was a lot of embarrassment. And my way to compensate for that embarrassment, by the way, embarrassment is a threat to your survival. So it turns on that fight flight system really quick, is that I would avoid. And as soon as anything got uncomfortable or challenging, or I thought I might fail, or I was going to be embarrassed, I would avoid any way possible, whether it was to quit. I quit every piano lesson, cello lesson, violin lesson, voice lessons, art lessons, boating lessons. I quit everything as soon as I hit that point where I felt challenged. And then as I got older, it was more excuse making. I would excuse myself from things or not go to parties and social events. And as I got into college, I said, you know what, it's easier to drink and then I can do it. So I started to really go down that road of compensation for this. And when I was at age 35, when I took the brain gym class and learned about this simple thought process, is that when you're under stress, that the two sides of the brain cannot, may be blocked and not communicate. What I realized was that my language centers, which are more for me, I believe, on the left side of my brain, were blocked. It wasn't that I didn't have the words and that I was stupid, because believe me, that's how I felt. I couldn't access my left hemisphere. And when I learned that it was just an access issue and I could do things to help me have that access and empower myself, my life changed drastically. And that was at age 35. And so when I talk about this stuff, I do get passionate. And this is where my passion for working with kids and families is. I was one of those kids. And when I learned about this, I said, if I can do this at age 35 and know how much I changed my life, what if I helped a kid at 5, 10, 15, 20? Their educational opportunities are going to be so much different. Their social opportunities, their self-esteem, their resilience is going to be so much better. So this piece of making sure that the two sides of the brain are communicating is a big piece of being resilient. So a couple of the activities that we're going to do that open up those two sides is, the first one is called thinking caps, which is an ear massage. And before we do this ear massage, I just want you to pause and do some more noticing. I'm going to ask you to do something no one's ever asked you to do, but notice your ears. Most of us aren't even aware of what we have ears. When you ask kids to draw a face, they generally forget to put the ears on. They're just not really noticeable, but they're really important to our sense of equilibrium, our balance, our hearing, obviously. So what I want you to do is, we're just going to do a massage, and we're going to unroll the cartilage from front to back, from top, and then go down your earlobe on both sides. So, yep, I know this is crazy weird, but it's all good. There's so many acupressure points in the ears. The ears are connected to every part of our body, as they were the first sensory system to develop in utero. Inside the inner ear is the vestibular balance system, which governs all our sensory processing. So by opening up these channels, it's like a major boost. Kids love their ears rubbed. Oh my goodness, that's one of their favorites when they come to Brain Fit. And yes, I rub a lot of kids' ears. All right, so just take a second, and now I want you to notice your ears again. Okay, some of you may feel, oh, those are warm. Oh, they're tingly. They're definitely awake. My voice may seem clearer or crisper than it did before. Maybe background noises aren't as loud as they were before. So just kind of notice. Feels like I can hear better. I always love this one. Yes, Jennifer, I love that. I miss you. Oh, so that's, and we're opening both sides of the hearing. So we're not only going to hear the details, we can hear the big picture because they're actually linked to opposite sides of the brain. So we want to hear the whole thing, details and big picture. The next one we're going to do is the whole body, crossing that vertical midline, cross crawl to get the two sides activated. So this is a very popular brain gym one. You can do this sitting, but it's really about taking one side and crossing to the opposite side. You can get your elbows to it. So, yep. See if we can get up and move a little bit. You can touch your feet. You can go behind your body and touch the opposite arm and hand behind, or hand and foot behind. You can do this laying in bed. You can do it sitting in a car. There's no limits to getting the two sides of the brain and body working together through this cross crawl. And I usually do that for about 30 seconds or so. Just get the heart pumping. And some of you, many people at different times, including myself, actually hesitate before we go over to cross over that midline. It's like, wait a minute, how do I, which foot? And those are just beautiful examples of how the left and right sides of the brain are not always 100% communicating. And so if we can stop and notice without worry, without judgment, let's say, you know, I got to start moving through things so that I can be the best me I can be, which is an awesome thing to do. That's called resilience. Last one we're going to do tonight is something called lazy eights. And this, you know, is a lot of variety. It can be done on paper, it can be done in the air, it can be done in sand, it can be done in so many ways. But the basic idea is that the eyes and hands are coordinating, and the eyes are tracking the hands and crossing this left-right midline so that the two sides of the brain connect. So if you're going to put your finger in front and look at your thumbnail, and then you're going to trace the 8 around with your eyes, keeping track of it. If you get dizzy, stop. This is actually a higher level exercise. And after you do, you know, 2 or 3 on one side, you're going to switch hands because movement is then initiated from the opposite side of the brain. So it's a different setup. We want to be able to initiate movement from either side of our brain and body. So do a couple of those. I'd be interested to hear in the chat box what this is like for some of you, what you're noticing. And then the last one is to make an X with your thumbs, put your 2 hands together, and trace again. Again, when both eyes are working together as a team, so much is easier. Reading is easier, eye contact is easier, driving is easier. I'm here and it was very organizing. I definitely a little dizzy. Okay, Judy, slow down. I can feel my eyes are tracking as smooth as they could. And it is. And sometimes, some days, my eyes are jumping all over the place. And I'm like, okay, you know, again, noticing and not getting upset with myself, but saying, this is going to give me information of how I can be more organized and balanced to be more resilient for my day. So let's go back and think about your goal about resilience. We didn't spend a lot of time in terms of your intention and what you really want, but we did kind of do a pre and post with the words that I stated at the beginning. So let's go back to that and just take a moment and notice your brain, body, and thoughts when I say these words. Money, remote learning, COVID, presidential election, the riots, Zoom, family, vaccines. Just notice if you were triggered as much. Maybe there was just that less triggering, more ability to respond to those words instead of react to those words. Notice your thoughts. Are they any more positive, any more hopeful than they might have been? Notice your body. Did you not get the butterflies in the stomach or the tightness of the jaw that you did before with those words? Any emotions coming up that you can label? Let's see. I'm loving all these responses. Let's see. More calm and relaxed. My shoulders were lower, less triggering. Breathing was more regular. Many more positive responses this time. Yes, positive and hopeful. Significantly less despair. Excited. Oh, this is wonderful, wonderful. And if you could rate your level of resilience right now, would it be any higher than it was before? Mine is definitely up. I feel more like a 7.5 or an 8. I was feeling honestly disorganized at the beginning of this presentation, and now I feel grounded. I feel hopeful. I feel more clear-headed. I'm back to my passionate self. Speaking slower, I know. I'm not going to deny that I can get disorganized as well. Up to at least a 6 from a 4. I feel great. Awesome. Awesome. All right, so resilience is really about taking the time to set yourself up to be resilient. It's not, I mean, some of us naturally are more prone to be resilient than others, but we're all human beings. And setting yourself up through setting your intentions, being clear about what you want, be action-oriented, do the noticing. Noticing is a great self-awareness thing that more people want to do, and then move your body to organize those. And Brain Gym is an excellent program to learn some of those movement opportunities. I have not heard about havening. I don't know what that is, Sandra. Maybe you can give us a little bit more information on that. I don't know. Maybe somebody else does. Havening, Havening. Yes, you can send me a video. Go ahead, Judy. You want to answer it live? Maybe.
I was trying to, but I'm not sure it's letting me type it.
Yes, I can hear you now.
I'm going to type it in.
Okay, she's typing the answer. While we're waiting on that, I am, like I said, we have different trainings that we have through BrainFit Academy. We have a Brain Gym 104 coming up. We do something called reflex integration, which is basically you working at the brainstem level to develop and organize the lower brain with primitive movements that we are supposed to make as babies, but sometimes we missed out. So we go back to the beginning. We have a moving from survival mode to learning mode coming up for teachers on April 10th. And more in-person stuff, hopefully by the end of the summer. All of this is online. So let's see. I don't see Judy's response. I'm trying, Judy.
I just said to her, perhaps she could do a webinar on havening, and that she should definitely send it to you, because you're always adding different modalities, and that would be super helpful for you to have yet another one in your toolbox. And havening is wonderful. Actually, I've had an experience of it. And
yeah, I've never heard of that one. So yes, I'll be interested in looking that one up for sure.
Can you tell everybody how they can reach you?
You can reach me through our website. It's probably the easiest. It's brainfitacademy.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on tonight and exploring some resilience tools. And here's to 2021.
They definitely work. Thank you so much, everybody. Reach out if you have any questions, and thanks for showing up tonight. Have a good
Thank you.
night.